Fletcher Cox is hopping aboard PH.
We are muted.
Are we? Should we? Are we good? All right.
Can you hear us now? Can you hear us now?
The comment section saying no audio.
Oh no. Can you hear us now?
Check.
Hello. Hi friends. Hello there. Give us some comments if you can hear us in the chat.
I'm not twerking.
Jamie's gonna twerk because we're having audio issues. Sarah,
audio restored. All right, we're back.
Welcome to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Yes, it is Friday, the first Friday of November. So happy that you're here because I thought we were gonna have to have Jamie twerk for likes and for comments.
For free.
So not for free for the dollars. For the dollars, guys. Listen, it's a weird, funky. It's a freaky Friday. We're having a little bit of everything happening today, and but we're here, guys. PHLY Phillies podcast is here. Thank you guys for tuning in on YouTube. For those tuning in on podcast platforms, happy to have you here as well. Jaime Lindor, they can hear us now. We were talking about how we're excited. It's Friday, of course, a big weekend. More games this weekend. Sixers playing against Phoenix, and then the big one, Sunday.
Yeah,
Eagles, Cowboys.
I'm fired up.
Woo!
Yeah, me and Bo will be on. Bo and Zach. Excuse me. Zach will be at the stadium. Obviously, me and Bo here. We'll be on pregame at 4:00 Sunday, doing postgame after. And yeah, like Cowboys, Eagles, I think is a little overhyped at times. But when both teams are great and there's a lot of NFC standings on the line, this should be a pretty exciting one this weekend. So I'm pretty fired up for Eagles Cowboys. So you can check us out on Sunday.
I'm loving that.
That's a good tailgate to go down to.
It's a great tailgate to go down to. I'm not working on Sunday, so I will be living my best life on Sunday.
Do it.
Throwing back drinks, watching, and I'll take some drinks for all of you as well. Especially you, Jamie, since you'll be working the post-game show and all the all the game content in your.
If you've watched any Phillies post-game show, I'm not opposed to having a couple drinks on it.
As you should be. Do you, man?
So while we're on the subject and before we move on from it, how do you feel? You think the Eagles pull it off?
I feel good. It's
gonna be a really tight game. I think
it is. It's gonna be a dogfight for sure. Listen, when I keep telling people, because everybody wants to completely doubt the Eagles and talk about how Jalen Hurts is struggling, the number of interceptions he's had, the O-line struggles, the D-line struggles. The Eagles are the only team in the league with 7 wins for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to have bad games and still win. Look at the 49ers who dropped 3 in a row. Brock Purdy. Not a great production. So I'm saying, you know what? I'm optimistic. No team right now is consistently hot week to week. The Dolphins were the team everybody was high on. And then look what the Eagles did to them. Yeah. So I'm happy with the fact, even though the Eagles aren't playing perfect football, which you shouldn't be this early in the first half of the season, they're still grinding out wins. And I think Sunday is going to be no different. We're beating up on the Cowgirls.
Yeah, I want to see Dak suffer.
Me too.
Not like physically. I just want to see him have a bad game. I don't want that.
I'd like to see Micah.
Philadelphia media host says he wants Dak Prescott hurt. No,
that's what's gonna come out.
Yeah,
Someone's gonna clip that little piece. I want to see Dak suffer and then have him.
I just want to see him have a shitty game. In other words, so a lot of fun this weekend. The Sixers got a big win last night, and of course now it's Phillies.
That was a fun one.
That was fun.
Yeah,
the
it's
Sixers
a fun
are surprising.
time. They are. It's a fun time right now because the Flyers and the Sixers are surprising people because they're finding ways to win. I feel like the Sixers specifically kind of have this grinded out underdog vibe, which we always do in Philly. And you see Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris having good games. So it's a fun time right now.
And a Furcan first quarter last night for the ages.
And with that, it's not only fun because we have off-season conversation to get into, whoop-de-doo, sarcasm, but because it's Friday with Foley. That's right, our first Friday, or I guess first official Friday with Foley edition, because today we've got a lot to get into with grading. We're talking about World Series odds, the poor Padres, and by poor, I mean financially poor. And also we've got John Foley back on the show again today. John Foley, welcome into our Friday with Foley edition. Happy to have you here, buddy. Looking forward to being able to talk Phillies with you and having you back on again. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here once again.
Look at that. He's upgraded the backdrop since last week. Nice.
I had to go all out for you guys. Like 1999. So.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, John, we've been grading, and for everybody tuning in, we've been grading every day a different group for the Phillies. We started with the starting pitchers. We did infield on Tuesday. We went with the bullpen. Then we did outfield. And today we've got to go with the coaching staff because they're not above getting graded also. And so let's jump right in. I think for this, it's not just Rob. We're going Rob, Dave, Kevin, everybody. Everybody's going to get graded. Caleb. So I feel like we should start with Kevin Long. Probably fitting. Sure. Jamie, how are you feeling about Kevin Long this season and what he did?
I think when it comes to a hitting coach, they get overpraised when the team does well. They get over-criticized when the team struggles. With some of the veteran hitters like your Treys and Kyles and Nicks and Bryces of the world, I don't know how much – like they help, obviously, and they help them work through film and prepare for hitters and all of that. But, I don't know if they're really going to have an impact on somebody that's – already an established vet. So what I look for with the hitting coach, for right or wrong, is how does he do with young guys? How does he help the young guys come along? And I think when you look at Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh, Christian Pache, even Johan Rojas, who hit nearly 300 in the regular season, for that I gave Kevin Long, the hitting coach of the Phillies, a B+, because I think a lot of young guys took steps in the right direction. Obviously, it all fell apart versus the Diamondbacks when they shifted their approach to the Phillies and just started throwing them slop. But I can't roast Kevin Long for that because I think a lot of that falls on the players. I don't think he was telling them to go up there and swing low and outside and flail at first pitches. So overall, fairly happy because I think most of the youth on the team all took positive steps offensively. So I went with a B+.
Yeah, and let us know in the chat what you're thinking. I know Mopar is saying Kevin Long, you don't want him back. MBDBDBF is saying the approach this team had in the NLCS was utterly embarrassing. And Martian, we do agree. We do appreciate having John on and ready to go. And John, let's toss it over to you with that. What is your grade for Kevin Long, hitting coach, for this season?
I would go just a little bit lower than Jamie. I would go with a B. I think his point is very well taken about the code. Stott, great season. But I give a little more weight to what happened at the end of the NLCS there, in that the the Diamondbacks obviously came up with a plan that these guys are free swingers. Don't give them much to hit, and a lot of it's on the players, especially the veterans. They need to be able to adjust that on their own. At the same time, if we're going to give Kevin Long credit for, earlier in the series, sort of giving the advice to jump all over pitches early, I think you got to ding him a little bit for what went on late in the series, and that if an entire team is struggling with their approach, I think that reflects on Kevin Long. Now, like Jamie said, it's hard to determine how much of this is the players, how much of this is the coach. But I don't think I can go higher than a B with the way things ended.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair, John. I mean, I said to Renee in one of the post-game shows, I was like, if I'm Kevin Long and one more time Trey Turner and Nick Castellanos swings at a low and outside breaking pitch, I would tell them I'm on the verge of climbing out of this dugout and fighting you at home plate. Because if you do get that bat off your shoulder in any instance here, I will come out and fist fight you in front of your family. That's at the point. So, yes, I think what you're saying is totally fair. I think you do have to put a little blame on that. Yeah, I think and I have a feeling Renee is going to follow in your footsteps here.
And that is exactly why, John, I also gave Kevin Long a B. I do agree with you, Jamie, that it was great to see the improvements in the young guys, but I keep grading on the full season and weighting the postseason with a heavier percentage. To be honest, I felt like if I was looking at just the postseason, it could be a little bit lower because of the fact that you mentioned, John. What are you saying? Granted, I'm not in those conversations. I have no idea what Kevin Long is or is not saying, but what I do know is that it did not get better. And looking at the NLCS, like you said, Jamie, and this is exactly what I was thinking, I would have loved to see Kevin Long, and again, we're only limited what the cameras show us, having those conversations with guys. Trey, Nick, Bryson, their approach at the plate has to change. And if they're not, you absolutely have to be able to have the conversation with them to try to work on something. Now, I don't know if he did, but what I do know is it did not improve. So that's where, at the end of the day, as a coach, no, you're not out there, at the plate batting for them, but you are the guy that's supposed to be making adjustments, talking to them, getting them locked in, getting them focused, making those tweaks. If pitchers are tweaking how they're throwing balls to Bryce, okay, well, you need to also tweak how you're approaching the ball. So I know in the chat you guys are saying similar stuff. Chris, you're saying the fact that everyone was swinging at garbage, bingo. They couldn't adjust to the Diamondbacks. That's my problem. The approach at the plate was frustrating because it felt like we kept seeing it over and over again, and there was no change, no adjustment, and it was absolutely something that I do blame Kevin Long for. That is your job. You are the hitting coach, and if the team is not hitting well, I'm blaming them and I'm blaming you. Yeah, so I give him a solid B for that exact reason.
Mopar in the chat says Bryce's approach was consistent. He just wasn't getting anything to hit. Yeah, and that on me falls on Rob Thomson for not changing out Alec Boehm out of the 4-hole. But we'll get to him in a second. I don't think Bryce was that bad. I just think the Diamondbacks realize we can't let this guy hurt us.
Well, here's the thing. We expected that. We even said it took opponents long enough to realize to make sure you're not throwing Bryce anything to hit. But still, as the hitting coach, you have to talk through the entire batting order to figure out ways to get hits. And to see Nick Castellanos, for example, have just one hit in the first game of the NLCS and none after that, it's not acceptable. So I do put some of that on Kevin Long because that's quite literally your job to manage. Tyler, what are your thoughts if you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think that the hard part, these are all like grown men. They're professional hitters. Yeah. So I don't know. I really genuinely, when I hear about hitting coaches getting hired and fired and a lot of times
scapegoats,
they get scapegoated
yeah.
and it kind of is what it is. So I genuinely don't know how to properly grade a guy who is working under an offense that is expected to do exactly what it did throughout the course of the year, which was mash and strike out a lot. So, if you look at the numbers that they posted, they were 8th in the league in home runs, 8th in the league in RBIs, and they were also 8th in the league in strikeouts. That is about as consistent as they possibly can get. Yeah. So, we've talked about living and dying by the sword with this team, with the long ball, and maybe, I know, Renee, I know you don't like that mentality of
nope.
strictly having one way to go about things, but they're 9th in average, 9th in on base, and they're 5th in slugging across baseball this year. They were exactly what we expected them to be, and it just so happened that they went ice cold at a really, really, really bad time. I think Kevin Long gets a B for me, but I genuinely don't know how to properly grade Kevin Long based on the fact that they did exactly what they thought they were going to do all year, and they also totally mismanaged their approach at the plate in the back end of the NLCS.
I think my concern is I hear you on the fact these are grown men. These are professional athletes. These are the best of the best. But that doesn't excuse any other coaches or coordinators in any other sport. And so I can't go back and just say it's not his fault because they should know, they should be able to do this and they should be able to coach, as professionals, figure it out. No, then what's the point of that's why we have hitting coach, pitching coach, assistant hitting coach.
But
that's why they're there to coach and manage the guys. So I don't fully blame him, but to some extent, your role is to make sure in the biggest moments you can get hits. And I love the fact that in the regular season, the stats that the Phillies had smashing home runs was great, but I also cannot stand the fact that come the NLCS specifically, and even the loss to the Braves in the NLDS, it was the same woes game to game, and also the same issues that we saw last year against the Astros.
But to believe that he's not doing that, I think is wrong.
Well, that's the issue. I'm not there to know exactly what is or is not being said.
But I have to believe because he's praised around baseball. Jonathan in the chat says, Trey Turner even shouted him out as a reason he chose the Phillies. I have to believe he's having these conversations when it goes cold like that in the NLCS. I blame the players. Because I don't think Kevin Long is not having those conversations. I think those conversations aren't translating to the field.
And that's where I'm not putting it all on him, but I'm putting some of the blame on him too.
Yeah, that's fair. I think you guys are all fair with your grades.
It's one thing if it's not translating. It's another thing if it's the same issue over and over again, and you see the same swings, the same at bats. So
I would have spiked their waters with Adderall or something.
It's something's got to be able to change. Well, on the other side, let's talk about pitching coach Caleb Cotham. Tyler, I'll let you jump in first actually on this one and share your thoughts, and then we'll go over to you, John.
Yeah, I thought Caleb Cotham did a pretty good job this year because across baseball, the numbers were up, and I think it's a factor. There's two factors that play into that. It's the banning of the shift, and it's the pitch clock. I mean, I know we talked about how much the pitch clock annoyed us, especially when it comes to Craig Kimbrell, but there is merit to say it did change pitchers' approaches. Stolen bases were up, and I think across baseball, ERA was up. The Phillies were 12th in team ERA this year. It's not great. It's not awful. It's right in the middle of the pack. But if you look across baseball, the leading ERA team as a team for 2023 was the Milwaukee Brewers with a 3.71. If this were last year, that would have posted 10th in Major League Baseball.
Wild.
I mean, there's a clear shift in an offensive focus because of those two things, right? ERA was up. They were worse. The Phillies ERA as a team was worse this year than it was last year, but they had a higher rank. They ranked 12th this year. I think they were 15th or 16th last year. I think that
Chicks dig the long ball, Tyler.
Every pitching coach had a tough go of it this year because of the fact that the numbers were up. The Dodgers posted a team 2.8 last year, and the best this season was 3.71. I think that it's really hard to grade on a proper scale for any pitching coach this year. So I will give him merit for guys like Jeff Hoffman. I will give him merit for guys like Christopher Sanchez and Jamie. I'm not going to take too much because I know you're going to touch on those guys. I think he gets a B-ish as well because, I really don't know where to go from here other than I think that the team won a lot of games and they had success in the playoffs, and Caleb Cotham was a fair portion of it.
John, take it away. What do you got for him?
Yeah, I think I agree on just about all those points. I mean, B-ish sounds about right. I might go B-. I do understand that ERAs are up across the league, but I'm looking at some of these numbers. Nola 4.46, giving up just astronomical amounts of home runs. Wheeler turned it on for the playoffs, but in the regular season 3.61, which is un-Wheeler-like. And you go one by one through these pitchers, and there's not many pleasant surprises. I mean, Hoffman being a very notable exception. First half of Craig Kimbrell was a notable exception. So to the extent, and we have the same problem we have here with trying to assess Kevin Long, in that you don't know how much of it is on the players and how much of it is on a pitching coach. But to the extent you look at players' numbers and you look at their historical numbers, there doesn't seem to have been much of a positive effect here with anyone except Hoffman. I think Anthony didn't really perform up to expectations. Gregory Soto, 4.62 ERA. I mean, I just look across the board here, and it seemed like the plan was to bring in these big arms, and people who can just throw gas. and then coached them up. I don't think they got coached up to a point where it was enough. So I'll go B-.
Oh, solid. Well, I went with a B+ actually for Cotham. Same exact reasoning. I think for the bullpen, but also when you look at the numbers, as you mentioned, we saw some improvement in some areas, but it still was it. It is hard to grade coaches, but I think for specifically Cotham versus Long, I feel a little bit more optimistic in that the pitching in the postseason was exactly what we expected. Minus Craig Kimbrell in games 3 and 4 of the NLCS. For the most part, it felt as though the pitching was exactly what we expected. So I gave him a B+ just because I think it was just solid. It was, the adjustments to the pitch clock. I do think that needs to be something, Craig probably won't be back, but something like that is an area that I don't know what those conversations are either. But I think that overall, bigger picture, I felt a little bit more comfortable with the pitching down the stretch versus hitting and at bats. And for that reason, I gave him a little bit of an upper hand over Kevin Long.
Yeah, I also went with a B+. I think team ERA and team WHIP in the playoffs were actually the best in all of baseball, which makes losing to the Diamondbacks so much worse. Your team ERA was great and your team WHIP was great. And those that again doesn't all go to Caleb Cotham, but I think when it comes to playoff time, each game's plan is more amplified than it is in the regular season. And as Tyler said, I think Hoffman and Christopher Sanchez I thought was spectacular this year. And again, with those coaches, I look more towards how do they handle the youth, how do they help the youth develop more than I do the veterans. Was Caleb Cotham going to fix Taijuan Walker's second half of the season struggles? No, that's probably who Taijuan Walker is at this point. But with a guy like Sanchez, Hoffman had kind of been a journeyman, was on the verge of going to Japan, and something was unlocked there. There's a guy around baseball I really admire called Brent Terry Strome, and he was actually the Diamondbacks pitching coach this year. Was with the Astros for a long time, and he was one of those guys that unlocked Charlie Morton's spin rate. And certain coaches can get stuff out of guys more so than others. So it certainly wasn't the best year by any means. I went B+. I think that's fair. But I think Christopher Sanchez and Jeff Hoffman could be instances of a positive effect on two guys this year. And again, the playoff numbers as a staff were pretty exceptional. So, I think a B+ is fair. I toyed with the idea of an A-, but I settled in at B+.
Yeah, it definitely felt like you could see Cotham getting the best out of guys. And, Hoffman's a great example of a reason why I gave him a B+. I agree with all your points. I know in the chat you guys are saying B- for Mopar. You have to start off better April 1st. The WC for some of these guys, you get it, but we need a better out of the gate. I know CMIC 62480 is saying, why did it take so long for Nola to get adjusted to the pitch clock? I think that goes back to Tyler's point about just the fact across the league, you could see everybody struggling to adjust to the pitch clock. And then Jonathan, you're saying it's no surprise the ERA went up. They didn't have a fit starter for the first few months, and the bullpen was wildly overused in the first half. Yeah, there's obviously other things you can attribute to what we saw this season. But let's see what else. Let's keep going with the grading trade here.
Here's the big one.
Let's talk about Dave Dombrowski. Jamie, you say it's a big one. I'll let you go first. Take it on. What do you feel about Dave?
I think Dave and his staff, and I've been screaming for them to hire somebody from the Rays front office for the past 6 years. It seemed like they finally did that. Preston Mattingly, some of the guys they've put in place to fix the farm system and the developmental system, I think have been A+ hires. I really like the direction of everything. I like the offseason moves. A guy like Hoffman, for him to be one of your high leverage guys at the end of the year, I think you get a lot of credit for. The problem is the trade deadline, I gave him an F. This was an opportunity I didn't give Dave Dombrowski, I gave him and his staff a B. But the trade deadline specifically got an F, and that was a chance to really help this team who was championship, contending in caliber. And your big moves were Rodolfo Castro, who didn't really see the field, and Michael Lorenzen, who, started out with a spectacular no-hitter and then basically barely contributed in a positive way the rest of the year. So your two trade deadline moves were all for naught. And, offseason stuff, I think a couple other things, they've been good enough that it kind of, dragged it down to a B instead of being, an A or an A+.
Yeah, I actually gave him a B also for the two main names that I highlighted was Castro and Lorenzen because
stunk.
Those are trades that you look back on and you're like, why? What's the point of that? But I do love the fact Orion, Hoffman, even calling up Yoro and Johan Rojas. There were some transactions throughout the course of the season that I thought the timing of it was good. Some of the guys that were moved down, some of the guys that are brought up, giving them a chance. So I think a solid just a B. But I'm interested to see, especially this, as we get into the offseason and we continue having conversations around Reese and Nola and different guys, exactly how that plays out. John, what about you?
Be a little controversial, but I want to go hard on Dave. I think I'd give him a C. Those trade deadline moves, you've got a team that's all in, that's ready to go, ready to win a World Series, and you come away with Castro and Lorenzen for a start or two, including a no hitter. That seemed like an amazing hit, but it ended up actually being, sort of a not such a helpful move. Castro didn't give you anything at all. And when you look at a team that came so close to winning the NLCS, it just, it leaves me at a loss that you take a team, you spend all this money on the team in the offseason, you get it 90% of the way there, and then the trade deadline rolls around, and these are your big pickups, these are your acquisitions. They didn't have to make a blockbuster. The stars were all in place. But you got to get a little something more off your bench than Castro was giving you. Lorenzen ended up really not having much of a role in the postseason. So just based on those trade deadline moves, I see the comments. Unfair for a guy. I mean, we're talking about what he did this year. I think Dave Dombrowski is the right guy for the trade job. Deadline, I by no means do I think they should move in a different direction. I think he's great. But if we're looking at what he did this season, the offseason moves, Trey Turner was sort of obvious to everyone. He got it done, so I give him credit for that. Taijuan Walker was a good signing for a 3-4 starter. 15 wins, ERA in low fours. He's about what you would expect. But when it came to some of the other offseason moves, Gregory Soto, I don't know if he brought more to the team than having those quality reserve players that we had last year. Vierling, Maton, we didn't have those sorts of guys to really just pop up in unexpected moments and really deliver. We had Jay Cave getting 300 plus at bats. That shouldn't be happening. So again, overall, big Dave Dombrowski fan. Don't want to see anyone else taking the reins here, but for what he did this season, I understood a lot of the strategy, but it didn't work out. And then the trade deadline was a big F. So I'm gonna give him a C overall.
Yeah, and that's fair because as you mentioned, we're not talking about last year helping as the Phillies get to the World Series and he gets a contract extension. We're talking about this season and off season into the trade deadline. And there's a lot of different points in there you're making. I know in the chat is all over the place. A lot of A-minuses. I know. I think it's C Mick said. I'm just gonna. Oh, that's a weird name. But C Mick said A- only for Castro. I'm gonna get rid of the numbers. Mopar saying making fun of Double D nickname, but Eugene Krabs, of course, using his usual comments. But a couple A-minuses I saw in there, some A's. So you guys are high on Dave Dombrowski. But John, I think your points are valid. And Tyler, I'm interested to see where you fall on the spectrum. We've got everything from an A to a C. Where do you have Dave graded.
Yeah, so I think that if we're going to play this, and by the way, before we get started, because I'm going to use the phrases general manager and like president of baseball operations like kind of interchangeably, because I don't want people to go, well, Sam Folt's actually the general manager.
Yeah.
All right, we know what you know what I'm trying to say here when I say this. There are very few people that are in charge of baseball decisions. How about that?
I like that.
That I would take over Dave Dombrowski over the course of the last 2 seasons. Alex Anthopoulos is the one that immediately comes to mind. I think that everything he has touched has turned to gold for the Atlanta Braves over the last probably 3 or 4 years. Yeah. But other than that, I mean, I've looked around the league and there have been some terrible baseball decisions being made across both National and American League. The Chicago White Sox are an absolute dumpster fire right now because of the moves that they have made. Dave Dombrowski has done far more good than bad, and I think if we're just talking about the acquisitions this year, I know Trey Turner had an up and down season. I think that the being able to acquire a player like that, even if with a bad first year, I expect a better year too. So that's a good move. Matt Strahm was a very savvy move. Yeah. Jeff Hoffman was a really savvy move. I'm not as in on the Taijuan Walker move. You guys know how much
Nathan
I don't
Eovaldi
like.
would have been better.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. But and to me, the Gregory Soto move that John was talking about on the surface was a good one because I'm not a Nick Maton guy. Matt Vierling is tough to lose. He's a fourth outfielder who can play all 3 positions. But I think the good has pretty much heavily outweighed the bad, except, as all 3 of you had pointed to, was the trade deadline.
Yeah.
It was uneventful, to say the least, and we all love the no-hitter. That takes him probably down at least a half-letter grade. So over the course of the last, 12 months, let's say about 12 months or so, I think that there's been way more good than bad. I would give Dave Dombrowski a B+ over the 2024 season.
I was right there on your heels with a B. Mopar raises a fair point, and he said the trade deadline around baseball was kind of dead this year, and you kind of need 2 to tango when it does come to a trade. It was a very uneventful trade deadline across baseball, and I feel like it's gotten worse the last 2 years, and maybe it's because of that extra playoff spot now, and teams feel as though they still have a chance and they don't want to sell, and look what happened to the Diamondbacks, and look what happened to the Phillies last year. So I feel like there's a hesitancy to move on from players more so than there was 3 years ago. So it's something to keep an eye on. It's something to put in your back pocket when you're going into this offseason, that, hey, maybe I can't get as many pieces as I might like to get at the trade deadline, and maybe I have to go grab that extra bullpen arm now when money wins.
Yeah, you guys are both hitting on it specifically about the uneventful trade deadline. Some good points. You know what's not uneventful and full of events, concerts, games? It's a Game Time app. The Game Time app is a place you can go to be able to find some great price tickets. Easy to find your seats. You can see your seats in advance, so you know exactly where you're going to be sitting, what your view is going to be, and it makes it very convenient for you to be able to get those tickets to go cheer on your favorite teams, sing along with your favorite artists and bands through the Game Time app. Use that code PHLY that's on your screen for those of you that are tuning in to watch us live on YouTube. Those of you listening on podcast platforms, again, it is code PHLY, and with that code, you get $20 off your purchase at the Game Time app. All right, well, we've talked about Kevin, Caleb, Dave. It only leaves us with one more topper, Rob Thomson.
I wish they actually got to a point where they were saying one more topper. That would have been cool.
Too soon. Not a great.
It still hurts.
Yeah, it does hurt. I don't know. I feel like I lowered the vibes here with that one more topper because we don't have that. Who wants to go first with that?
John, why don't you kick us off with Rob Thomson?
Sure. I think I'm a big Rob Thomson guy. I think I'll give him an A- on this season, and I think part of where your grade on Rob Thomson lands is sort of inversely related, right, to where your Dave Dombrowski grade lands. In that, how many options did Topper really have as they went rolling into the postseason? First of all, I love Thompson's approach in terms of being consistent, being level-headed. This team, they started 0-4. They were 5-10. I don't think they really got back to 500 until they were like 20-20. that could be tough, and a season can go off the rails early. We forget about what April looked like by the end of the season, but there could have been a lot of reactionary moves. There were people calling for all sorts of crazy lineup shakeups. Sit Trey Turner for a week, all the sorts of things that a steady manager just tunes out and says, "Hey, I believe my guys. We're going to keep moving forward here with what we're doing, and eventually it's going to work out." And eventually it did over the course of 162 games. If you look at the numbers, with a certain qualifying minimum number of games, he's your winningest manager percentage-wise in Phillies history. That's above Charlie, and again, sample size. You didn't have those late Charlie years, but that's above Charlie. That's above Dallas Green. That's above everybody else. He's been winning games. And helping the team through adversity. Like two straight seasons, you missed big chunk. Bryce Harper missed big chunks of the season. I think you gotta give Topper credit for all that. And then when he got to the playoffs, that end of the postseason, he was in a tough spot based on the options he had to him. Everybody wanted the lineup shakeup. They wanted a right-handed bat that could protect Harper better. Well, you had Bohm there, and sure, you could switch him out with Castellanos, and a lot of people were making that argument, but Castellanos was in like a 1 for 20 or something along those lines.
On JT, personally.
Yeah, JT, that could have made sense. But I do think there's not a ton a manager can really do other than show belief in his guys when it comes to the lineup. And then when it comes to the pitching decisions, he got kind of stuck. It wasn't like 2022 where he had a couple guys that he felt comfortable with in those high leverage situations. He didn't have to run in 2022. He didn't have to run Orion Kerkering out there. And I think Orion has an incredibly bright future. But he started in single A this year. He was
pretty
insane
wild
last year. So, and it's like it looked, and I was a believer. I said, okay, look, he's doing well at every level. It looks like he has ice water in his veins, and I think that's what led Thomson to use him in some high leverage situations. But I look at that as more that's a reflection on Dombrowski again, not Topper. That who he has to go to is Ryan. Kimbrel had a great first half of the season. By the end of the playoffs, he was unusable. So I think a lot of the things Thomson has been getting flack for are a little bit out of his control, and the things that he can control, I think he does well. So.
Jonathan in our chat here says it's difficult to know if Thomson is responsible for the bad decisions being made. We don't know how much influence from the front office and analytical department affects his on-field decisions. I can tell you this. I know for a fact that the analytics department at the Phillies has grown exponentially over the last 5 or 6 years, and they do have a heavy fingerprint on the matchups and a lot of decisions. So while he's the one pulling the trigger, yes, a lot of those decisions are made over his head. So, in fairness to Rob, I think that analytics department pushes a lot of buttons internally there.
So what's your grade that you're giving Rob?
I'll hop in. Yeah, sure. It's I gave him an A-. I think with the way the season started, a lot of teams that aren't quality veteran players, you could, and don't forget high paid players. So I think that the culture he's brought about ever since, taking over last year for Joe Girardi, the culture's great. And, they never think they're out of games. They have a resilience. And that's what I think the manager's biggest job is outside of, the bullpen decisions. I think the biggest things they do are making the right bullpen calls, which in the NLCS, you can blame him a little bit, I think, for Kimbrel in game 3 and 4, but not a ton else because pitching isn't what let you down in the playoffs. So I can't roast Rob for those. Your bats are what let you down. So I think the culture and never feeling as though you're out of games, even with 2 shitty starts to 2 years in a row now, they've been able to pull out of it So I think Rob gets a lot of that, to John's point of like stability and calmness. I think he has all that. And then managing bullpen, I think for the most part was pretty good this year. So, I remember the majority of my life as a Phillies fan, and it's not going to a World Series and losing in an NLCS in back-to-back years. So while it sucks and it hurts and all that right now, I don't think it's a reflection of Rob and his staff. I think for the most part, they did pretty well. So I went with an A-.
All right, Tyler, I'm going to actually let you go next because I'm interested to see.
You're going to drop the hammer last?
I'm going to drop the hammer last. I am.
Did you guys know the bleep around and find out graph?
Yeah,
the one that
yes,
the more you bleep around,
that
the more you find
graph,
out. It's kind of similar to managers, like where the axis is like talent versus productivity, and the more talent you have, the more expectations on productivity arise. This team was expected to be a playoff team both seasons. The way that the Joe Girardi stuff transpired, Rob Thomson was kind of heralded as a hero because of the way that he righted the ship. And this year they had expectations of going deep in the postseason, and they did. And I know that a lot of people believe that they came up short and because of who you lost to and how you lost. But the fact remains, you went to a World Series and went to an NLCS over the last 2 seasons. Rob Thomson pulls the right strings in some capacity to me to warrant a strong grade. Now, I will say this. I think that Rob Thompson's overusage of certain guys early in the season was detrimental to regular season success, such as Matt Strahm, such as Jake Cave, who had to kind of play more than we expected him to.
Cody Clemens played 49
a lot of games.
He was kind of screwed.
he was kind of working with the hand that he was dealt, and I tend to agree with Jamie and John. I know you guys were talking about the analytics department. Like, there's the hand dips pretty heavily into the pot for the decision making for this team. I think Rob Thomson is a calming factor. I don't believe Rob Thomson is like a massive difference maker in the decisions that he makes one way or the other.
Agreed.
Because I think there's only a handful of managers both directions that get that kind of leeway where, like, you've called all the right shots, or you like never call the right shots. Like last year, Rob Thomson called all the right shots, and this year he kind of rescinded to the mean a little bit. I think with all of that being said, there's expectations, there's talent level, there's a large payroll, and Rob Thomson has helped this team deliver to an extent to get to back-to-back NLCS, to go to a World Series. Rob Thomson gets a B+ for me this season, and I think that he was pretty good for most of the year, other than certain, like, I'm nitpicking about bullpen decisions, other than the Craig Kimbrell decision, which I know Renee's going to harp on. I just know it.
Yeah, she's going to give him a D. Yeah, it's coming.
But overall, I think Rob Thomson was pretty good this year with the hand he was dealt. I give him a B+.
Yeah, C-Mac in the chat says, I would have gone Roger Mason over Kimbrell there.
Oh, man.
As a dagger to my 93 childhood heart. Yeah, Thank you, C-Mac.
You're all feeling that. Okay, so guys, this might be my last time on the show based off of what I'm about to say. So if moving forward, it's just Jamie, Tyler, and John, it is what it is. At least I'm going out speaking my mind. I was not nearly as positive as you guys were with Rob. I think that managers, in my opinion, have a direct impact. It's kind of like parents on kids is the comparison I'll use. Like, your team is a reflection of how your manager is. And I think that Rob, in his ability to stay even keel, not too high, not too low, is great at times. But I think there's times where you can see that direct reflection on the team that they need to have a little bit more. And I know earlier, way earlier, Marshall Lynch was calling me out because I'm all about wanting in the clubhouse, in the dugout, more synergy. And I do. And I think that starts at the top with Rob. This team does a great job of celebrating each other, lifting each other up, cheering for each other. We got all the cool celebration and stuff. And they do a better job of that than most teams. But if there was a stat for, the inability to crawl out of ruts, I would say the Phillies struggle with that, for starting with the main reason of the lack of synergy when things are not going well. They get quiet, the dugout gets silent, everybody has this like mopey face, and I think that starts with Rob. I don't think he has to be the rah-rah guy, but I think the conversations and the way that this team deals with the ruts has to be better, because it's 2 postseasons in a row.
What is it, Renee?
I also fought him for Craig. I also fought him for the bad start to the season. This is his team. He's the manager of this team, and it's his job, whether it's managing emotions, managing how guys are playing,
I agree, Martian.
managing rotations.
The suspense is killing me.
He has to be the one to manage his team to make sure they're successful. And
drop it.
Like you mentioned, Tyler, this was a postseason team. This was a World Series team, and they underperformed this year, not just getting knocked out in the NLCS, but how they lost in those 4 games is not okay. I'm not settling, guys. I'm sorry. Everybody else can be rah-rah. The Phillies still had 2 good...
What is it?
It is a long goodbye. The Phillies had 2 good years. World Series, NLCS, they overachieved. No, they did not. I'm not settling. I'm raising the bar on Topper. And with that, my grade is...
I'm scared.
A C+.
Oh, okay. I was expecting
It's
you
not
to go
that bad.
D.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad. But
It's just
honestly,
Jamie's show now.
Degrees, baby. I can acknowledge that.
oh no, I'm going off the screen. But listen, I don't think we could. It's not okay for us to continue this narrative of, I understand the drive of the playoffs that we're all stuck with. This is not the same team. Completely different management, completely different way that he's instilling confidence in guys, and they're fantastic in stretches of the season. And then there's stretches where they just are not good. And to have an NLCS performance like that, even the NLDS loss, I keep going back. It's those 5 games that stand out for me. The loss to the Braves, the 4 losses to the Diamondbacks, last year's Astros, which we're not talking about last year. It is completely frustrating to me that Topper still gives you the same responses. That's Nick. Sometimes you can't hit. So no, absolutely not.
So when he signs his extension in a week or 2, your feelings will be...
Listen, I don't think you should fire him. I think you bring him back. I'm all for a nice 1 year. Let's bring him back. Let's see what he does next year. If there are no improvements, we're having a different conversation. But I just think to have the same woes season after season and continue with the same type of responses, you guys don't have to agree with me. The team's clubhouse and vibes are a direct reflection of Rob Thomson. And it's not great when they're not doing well. They can't only be good when things are going great and they're winning and they're smashing home runs. They have to find ways to pick themselves up when they're not. And I think it starts with Rob. So I'm going with a C+. I know you guys in the chat. Thank you for the prayers, Martian. Thank you for the statement, Eugene. Per sources, I've parted ways.
In your diamond engagement ring from MBD. So
oh, no.
Just cost you 0.25
At least I'm still
carats.
getting an engagement from MBDBDBF. Thank you. That's all I got, guys. That's all I got. Winning wild card series isn't that great, Barbara. The bar is just higher for me. I think that's what it is. You guys are,
okay.
You guys don't, you're just happy because it's not the playoff drought. I'm raising the bar. I want championships, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, my cap brand would be different too.
Gabe Kapler gets good out of bad talented rosters. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Tyler, you don't have to shake your head. He's had go look at his Phillies rosters he had. Gabe Kapler outperformed his talent.
One good year. You're in San Francisco was the only good year.
Look at his talent this year.
He is a bad manager.
He's not.
Miss Honey over here.
No. What
Miss
he
Honey over here
is a weirdo
nerd
who disrupts locker rooms. I think baseball mind, he's sound. I think the butthole tanning and the spitting out his ice cream and other stuff like that gets weird and it wears out its welcome pretty quickly. Yes, he does perineum tanning.
No, I know.
Oh, okay. I thought you were looking at me
no,
like...
it's
John, your thoughts on perineum tanning?
Well, what I can say about Gabe Kapler is I think I agree. I mean, I think he's got a great baseball mind, but he's not brilliant to the point where you're willing to put it up with all the rest of it. Are my thoughts on Kapler. No, I would like him and the tanning and everything that goes along with him to be somebody else's problem like it is now. I'm not nostalgic for the Gabe Kapler days, that's for sure.
Neither am I. I do follow him on Instagram, though, and I'll just let everybody know for the 2 people that care. He's kind of on an eat, pray, love, finding himself mission through Mexico right now.
Oh, good Lord.
And he's eating a lot of good foods and reflecting at the ocean and just getting in touch with inner Gabe. And I find his weirdness so funny.
Yeah, well.
He's the strangest.
Strange makes sense.
I appreciate strange.
Yeah, I've seen Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Mopar is saying that this is absolutely our best show to date. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest. I don't know if the bar is that high or that low, but thank you, Mopar. I'm going to take that as a compliment. But yeah, it is interesting. I think when you talk about coaches, as we've gone back to, let's go back to the Phillies really quickly. For any coaches and management, it's a tough battle because we don't know the conversations that are or are not being had. We don't know, as we talk about the influence of analytics in different departments, but what we know is what we see that's being played out. So I'm going to continue to raise the bar and hold people accountable. I think I just want the best for the Phillies. It's like tough love. And I did that for every player, and I'm not going to excuse the coaches and the staff from that either, Jamie. But I know we've got to move on here because time is a-ticking, and we are moving along.
Yeah, no, I think that kind of closes out, the grades on the 2023 season. Monday, MLB free agency officially opens. Granted, not a ton typically happens in those first couple days. I do think it hurts the sex appeal of the MLB offseason, whereas like NFL and NBA free agency opens and it's like deals are already done and legal tampering and this and that, and baseball's just like this slow trickle. But December 5th coming up is the winter meetings. My takeaway, John, and I'm curious before we let you go, I don't know if you caught any of Dombrowski and Thomson talking last week, but my takeaway from it was that Aaron Nola is by far and away their top priority. And the other interesting part is where's Bryce Harper going to play defensively? I think those two things affect the entire direction of the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last information I had read with Nola is that they were way apart. Maybe then you would think maybe a little bit of a down regular season would bring them closer, and then Nola has a pretty great postseason. So we're if he's looking for 8 years or something, I know the Phillies aren't going to come close to that. There's always a team out there willing to pay a massive amount because they feel like they're one, frontline starting pitcher away. I hope Nola's back. Honestly, I would take somebody if Nola resources could be reallocated to another starting pitcher that gives you the same thing. I would be in favor of that. Maybe a change of scenery for Nola. Somebody new comes in. Maybe the relationship is just run its course at this point, but. Until I hear a viable alternate plan, I really think you need to get Nola back. So
I think so too.
And then, I do. I think it makes all the sense in the world for them to sort of leave it to Bryce in terms of what he wants to do with his fielding position, and then from there you figure out where things go with Hoskins. If I had to guess, I would imagine they let Hoskins walk. But
vibe a little bit too, and it's just a guess. It's not an educated guess even. It's just I think Bryce was pretty exceptional at first, and I if I had to imagine going from right field to first, where you're involved on the majority of plays, is something that kind of tickled his fancy a little bit.
I agree. It's frustrating because we like Reese. We love what he brings at bats, but first base, and honestly, Bryce Harper locked down first base, so. I don't know. I think every day I'm feeling a little bit different about Reese and about Aaron and whether or not they should be brought back. But, John, we appreciate you taking time to join us and weigh in and join in on the fun. I know Mopar is saying this was the most interactive show we've had. Somebody, I think it was MBD, was saying this is their favorite show at PHLY because we always bring the fun. We'll take that. And there will be no Tyler Zulli slander in the chat. I agree with you, Eugene Krabs. But John Foley, thank you so much for joining us for Friday with Foley. We appreciate you weighing in to help grade.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hope to be back soon. Thanks.
We're excited to be able to chat with him every Friday. He'll be joining us here on the show. And also excited that you guys have been joining us in the chat. If you missed out, I know somebody said they missed out on the Dave Dombrowski's grading. Don't worry, drop it in the chat. Let us know. Or if you're listening on podcast platforms and you want to let us know your thoughts. I know people sometimes tag us, which is really cool. As they're listening to the show, they'll let us know where they're listening. how they're listening to the podcast, their comments, their thoughts on what we've said. So, you can always keep the conversation going, whether it's here, whether it's in our Discord. For those of you that are diehards, you can keep the conversation going there because that's a great spot to be able to talk around the clock and be a diehard to be able to join in our Discord conversations. We jump in on Discord as well to keep it going. So this conversation does not have to start here, Martian. We would like to talk Sixers. We'd like to talk Birds, but
I'll just say this about the Sixers real quick.
Oh.
Kelly Oubre might be the best bang for buck in the NBA right now.
Honestly, he really surprised me.
He's got this. I know he's got something else, some other shoe that's going to drop, and he's going to frustrate us, and he's going to annoy us. But right now, the dude is a straight up bargain. So
he's really out to prove something.
Yeah.
He hated the fact that people were overlooking him and didn't want to bring him into their teams, and he's out to prove why the Sixers made the right decision. And honestly, the performances he's had so far, yesterday alone, I wasn't a huge Kelly. I was kind of like, wait, why Kelly Oubre? But you know what? I don't mind saying I may have been wrong, but it's a long season, a lot of basketball left.
Well, you know something that people shouldn't overlook, like Kelly Oubre was overlooked, Renee, and that's Shady Rays.
Woo.
Gear up for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have got you covered with premium polarized shades. My cousin's been yelling at me for years to get a pair. He's been a Shady Rays guy for probably 5 or 6 years now. And now they have quick swap snow goggles for you. If you're a ski snowboarder, just mountain person, go get you some of those. Shady Rays is an independent company that has an unrivaled product that's just as good as any of those expensive sunglasses on the market. And that's not all. Shady Rays, they're a bit kooky. They're a bit nuts. They're wild. They offer the most insane protection in all of eyewear. And eyewear, Jamie. You can read.
Read words, English.
Every pair of sunglasses is backed by the lost or broken replacement plan. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they'll just send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase. Shady Rays is committed to making a difference in communities across the U.S. through their impact program, teaming up with nonprofits to help people live healthy, courageous lives through some of their most challenging times. And if you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange them for a new pair or return them free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop with Shady Rays. Their team always has your back. Exclusively for our listeners is a great deal. Shady Rays is giving out an amazing deal. Go to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. Wow. Dave, love the fact that you're listening to our show in the car yesterday. And
yeah,
Barbara, thank you for saying that we are the best show at PHLY. And that you guys are I'm just glad you guys are enjoying joining our show each time. Jamie, can you do the thing? Do you know how to do? Wait, why am I like the only, I can't do it.
Well, why?
I don't know.
There you go. You kind of got it.
It's like I can't really see though.
There's a screenshot for today's show, Tyler.
I can do this. Oh, I think I was originally trying to do it this way.
Yeah, no, you got to get the.
Tyler, can you do it? I feel like as a kid I could do it so
we'll tell
easily.
You if he can do it or not.
Oh, you removed the.
Yeah,
wow,
Tyler
yours
can do
looks
it.
good.
You really got to get the fingers on the jaw to flip the finger.
You know what? I got a little face. I feel like I should be able to do it easier. I got a little face.
Where did that come from? Me doing the Shady Razor hat? All right.
As you're doing the Shady Rays, I was over here trying to do it. If anybody caught me, and hopefully nobody's paying attention to me. And I realized I can't do it.
Barbara in the chat had asked about Blake Snell, yes,
I thought you were talking about her giving us an A+.
Oh,
but
well,
yes,
that is also
Snell.
awesome, Barbara. Blake Snell, look, he's the top pitcher on the market. He's going to get a lot of money in a lot of years, much like Aaron Nola. He's only really done it at this level for 1 year, so it's a little risky. But Monday, the reason I bring it up is Monday, we're going to dive into free agency and start looking at, the money they're losing, the money they can kind of add, what some targets might be early on in free agency if there is such moves. My plan right now is obviously Nola, like we just talked about with John. Yeah. And I would also try and grab honestly, I don't think there's that many major shakeups coming to the offensive side of things. I would like a veteran kind of center fielder to pair with one of the young guys. But I just go grab 3 or 4 bullpen arms. You can never have them. You can never have enough. come playoff time. So, when you're with us Monday, we're going to dive into the offseason and free agency ahead and all of that. But my plan would just be like throw a big lasso around some bullpen arms and bring them in here.
I mean, this postseason reminded us of that. You cannot have enough.
Never.
Because we even were saying on the show and have talked about it, the bullpen depth, anybody can step up to the mound, and then come postseason, we're like, who's next? Who do we call in? Who do we bring in? And even the fact that Craig had to be used back-to-back and Orion had to be used back-to-back. So
Barbara says Kevin Kiermaier. I think that's a big Tyler Zulli guy right there.
Oh, yeah. So it definitely leads to
Great
just
defense.
wanting to go grab. Yeah, there's pieces out there. I was looking at the list. There's some guys. I can't wait to dive into that on Monday. There's been some other crazy things as we get ready to wrap up really quickly, though. But you know where you don't have to worry about losing money? FOCO. They'll save you money finding great products, merchandise, apparel, bobbleheads, whatever it is you're looking, maybe even some cool, there it is, some cool eyewear. I'm going to practice all weekend, but maybe even some cool eyewear, hats, whatever it is that you're looking to rock your favorite teams, because Philly sports right now are rocking and rolling. Philadelphia Union have a playoff game next Wednesday. The Sixers are playing Phoenix.
Wednesday playoff game? Come on.
I don't want to talk about it. The Sixers are facing the Suns on Saturday, tomorrow. Eagles, Cowboys, Sunday. Flyers, the Fly Guys. So lots to support. Head over to FOCO. Use that code PHLY. Again, for those listening on podcast platforms or in their cars, wherever you're tuning in from, PHLY gets you 10% off when you head over to FOCO. All right. Quick run through because we have to wrap up here.
Yeah, we'll get into some of these more depth on Monday.
Yeah, we'll dive in quicker, but just a quick run through of some topics that we've been keeping an eye on. DraftKings did release the World Series odds. Well, they always have the World Series odds out, but DraftKings World Series odds, the Phillies dropped in 5th now.
I think it's a fair place,
right?
fair place to be. They're behind the Braves and the Dodgers in the NL. And then in the AL, you have the Astros and the Rangers. So, they're right there with the Yankees, better odds, worse odds for the gambler, better odds to win than the Yankees. Orioles are right behind the Yankees, Blue Jays, Padres, Rays. I mean, to me, when I read this, it's a 3-team race in the NL, and it's the Atlanta Braves, the LA Dodgers, and the Phillies. And hopefully they improve enough in the offseason where maybe they can shorten that number between them and the Dodgers a little bit.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that the Braves and Dodgers are still sitting at the top spots, but I think it's a lot of people just chopping it up to that the Rangers and Astros, they're not expecting to run it back specifically for the Rangers. So, yeah, that's interesting.
And these comments, and maybe we'll get the audio over the weekend, but Scott Boras made.
Oh, yes. Talk about it, Jamie.
Bryce Harper. Very interesting. And it's kind of, he joined the John Heyman podcast yesterday. And it's pretty clear from his comments that Bryce Harper's agent, Scott Boras, was not in favor of Bryce doing the no opt-out clause in his contract and knows his client is underpaid. And we'll deep dive this on Monday and read you the actual comments and everything. But just know this, a Bryce Harper contract renegotiation is probably going to happen based on these comments. So the Phillies are probably going to have to pony up a little bit more to keep Bryce happy, because it certainly seems like this is something that Boras and Bryce are going to push for, which is not the best news in the world, because part of the sexiness of Bryce Harper is that he is kind of underpaid by annual average salary, and that allowed the team to spend more elsewhere. So, that all goes into the offseason, conundrum that you're looking at. But just know that Bryce Harper and Scott Boras are looking for some more money, and I don't think anybody can say he doesn't deserve it. So
yeah, well, money is the conversation now around the league. The Padres, broke Padres, poor Padres, and not because we feel bad for them, because they are financially poor. Reportedly took out a $50 million loan to help cover the third largest payroll this season in Major League Baseball. The details on that are mind-blowing. I know this broke earlier this week, but as we're getting ready for Monday, it definitely makes you wonder. The Padres are dealing with some banking payroll issues Fortunately, definitely, Jonathan, not our money, not our problem. I could actually empathize with, you cashing checks too large that your bank account can't support.
Has said himself he's undervalued. So, like, if you were going before an arbiter, which they're not, John Middleton's comments would be very much used by Scott Boras in that bargaining agreement. So, yeah.
Yeah, so definitely keeping an eye on the Padres, specifically Juan Soto. Barbara agreed with you as they're talking about who is his agent.
I mean, if we're going to get nuts, go get Juan Soto. That'd be fucking awesome.
We'd love that. So Monday, as we're back, we will have plenty to get into because we've got to talk about all that's going on Monday in terms of the big news, the big conversation, money,
Cha-ching.
Future. So, Jamie, I know you have a birthday that's coming up this weekend tomorrow.
Yeah, I do.
Happy early birthday
Thank
to you.
you very much.
Happy birthday. I know we got to wrap, but I'm going to sing the quick version. Happy birthday. The Gracie's Corner version. Happy birthday to...
Okay. Going out to dinner with the girls tonight and my mom. So, very much looking forward to a nice chill weekend, and it'll be great.
Happy birthday to you. Gracie's
Thank you,
Corner.
everybody.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Give Jamie a nice happy birthday. Make sure you're sending him your birthday wishes. And we hope you enjoy your birthday. We hope you guys enjoy your weekend. Let's go Eagles, Phillies.
Go Birds.
Oh, no, I keep saying that. It's just habit.
Go Sixers.
I always say
Go
Phillies.
Flyers.
I'm just so used to saying
Go
go
Union.
Phillies. Go Sixers, go Eagles, go Flyers. We'll see you back here on Monday for more on PHLY Phillies podcast. As Jamie's going to be a whole year older. Jamie, see you next year. And have a good one. We'll see you guys Monday. Adios.
We all silly like the mayor.